Hi, this is Alan at Hobby Masters bringing you another one of our how-to videos. Today we're going to help all you people that got an old T-Max years ago, used it a few times, maybe got a little frustrated with it, threw it in the closet, let it sit for a few years, and now you want to take it out and run it again. But it just won't start. When you put a car away for a few years or even 1 year, you have to store it properly. And if you didn't, the engine might be a bit gummed up, the fuel line's gummed up, and some other issues. So we're going to go over a couple things with it right now to help you figure out how to get it running, if there's any damage to it from being in storage, and we'll help you get it started up. First thing you want to look at, the basic stuff. On your controller, check out your AA batteries. If they've been sitting in there for a year, they're probably dead. But you want to look for green corrosion if you had left batteries in there. If there is any corrosion on the controller, you can take some WD-40, try to clean it out. If it's too corroded and you can't get the power light to come on, well, your controller is done. You'll need to visit your local hobby shop and get a new one. Next thing you want to look at is inside the vehicle, the same issue in the receiver box, or in the battery box. In your battery box you have 4 AA batteries. Take them out. There's 2 screws that hold it down on a T-Max. Check out that holder. Make sure there's no corrosion on it. Put 4 new AA's in it. And then you want to power up the radio system. Turn your controller on and turn the switch on your vehicle. And what you want to do is hold the front end up and turn the steering. If it's really sluggish moving like this, either your batteries are weak or your servo is weak. You want it to be quick. Fast turning steering tells you everything is okay. Check your throttle, make sure that's moving free. Sometimes on the older radio systems, you would see when the servos are going bad, they'll start shaking a whole lot. Time to replace the radio system. Keep this in the back of your head, because this money amount will add up over time. On this vehicle, everything is working just fine on the radio system. Now we go to the next thing to check, which is your motor. The motor has the big flywheel on it, and you can do is reach in with your hand and try to turn the flywheel. If the flywheel is jammed, grab a straight head screwdriver, and just try turning the flywheel a little bit. If the flywheel is frozen up, we're going to need to clean out the engine. The easiest way to clean this engine out, and just because it's seized, it doesn't mean it's a bad engine. The easiest way to clean your engine out is with some basic rubbing alcohol. What you want to do is take the glow plug out and just pour some rubbing alcohol into the engine. Let it sit for about 5 minutes. Most likely you'll then be able to start turning the flywheel and get it to break free. Once that flywheel is broken free, you have to get that rubbing alcohol back out of the engine or it's going to cause some corrosion. To do that, just take some fuel and pour fuel down there. We're going to take a short break and talk to you a little bit more about how to deal with that old fuel. Rubbing alcohol is a great way to clean out an engine. What it does is it takes all the oils that are gummed up inside your engine and breaks them free. That's really what's holding your flywheel locked shut, unless you happen to blow your engine the last time you ran it, but most likely it just seized from all the oils that sat in it. So, take the glow plug out of the engine and just take some rubbing alcohol and literally pour it right into there, just a little bit. You can also take the air filter off the car and put a little into the carburetor. Let it sit for 2-3 minutes and you should be able to start turning that flywheel either by hand or again with your screwdriver. Once you start to turn it a little bit, you'll see it can turn over more and more. Once you get it turning freely, turn the car upside down and drain out all the alcohol or as much as you can. It's not a big deal if there's still a little left in it. What you don't want to do now is take a break for lunch and go away because that alcohol just dried out your engine and now it may rust or corrode on you. So what you want to do is get some fuel back into that engine pretty quickly. Just take a couple drops of fuel, pour it into your engine or into your carburetor, turn the engine over by hand again, and now you have fresh fuel in your motor, which is what it wants. Now that we're done with the engine and you have an engine that's turning over freely, we can move on to some of the other things that may have gummed up from letting it sit. Next thing would be the fuel tubing. If you had fuel left in your fuel tank at all, odds are there's fuel inside your fuel tubing. Don't even bother trying to clean it. Go to your local hobby store, $2, pick up some fuel tubing. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Cut it to length, put it on, you're good to go. If they have fuel filters at your local hobby store, add a fuel filter in line. They're $3. You have a 1-cylinder motor. You get 1 grain of sand inside your fuel tank. If it sucks up through there, you scratch your cylinder, you're done. Spend a couple dollars, get a fuel filter for it. For your fuel tank, if you've got gummed up fuel sitting in the bottom of that, that's a really easy fix. I prefer to take the tank out of the car to do it. There's only 2 screws on the bottom of a T-Max holding it in. Again, back to our rubbing alcohol. Take the fuel tank, pour in a little bit of rubbing alcohol, put your finger on the hole on the bottom of the fuel tank where your fuel line goes, of course. Shake it up. 1 or 2 minutes of shaking it up, your fuel will all dissolve inside of there. Pour it out. You're good to go. Fuel tank is good. Just make sure that the spring on your fuel tank door, you can see this one doesn't fully close. You want it to really go down on its own all the way. We did test this one previously and it is working just fine. So once you've done that, you got your fuel lines routed. Put in about half a tank of fuel. Now, fuel has about 1.5 years of shelf life. If your fuel is older than that, it's been sitting in the garage, go to your local hobby shop and again, pick up a new thing of fuel. I'd recommend just starting with a quart of fuel. It's a lot cheaper to buy gallons, but if you don't know your engine's going to live, start with a quart, see where it's going to go from there. Alright, so now we've checked out our motor, make sure that's turning over freely. We've replaced our fuel line, fuel tank is cleaned out, we've got some fresh fuel, we've got a radio system that's working. Next thing we need to move on to is make sure our carburetor is set properly. The needle valve on the carburetor, you can turn them by hand, you can use that same old handy dandy straight head screwdriver. The stock setting on a Traxxas T-Max motor for your needle valve is 4 turns from out. What that means is turn it all the way in, and what I always like to do when I turn it in is count so I know where I was left before. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3, half. I was at 3.5 turns out on this one. When your T-Max is brand new, it's at what's called 4 turns out, which is this. 1, half, 2, half, 3, half, 4. If you've run your engine for a while, you got some use out of it for a few months, you're probably down around the 3.5 setting. So that's where we like to go, 3.5, just for a base starter for tuning the engine and getting it started. Now, depending on your weather conditions outside, your altitude, that is going to need to be adjusted once you're on the road and running. But to make sure our engine is workable, this is a good starting point. So 3.5 turns out on your needle valve. We've got everything else ready to go. Next thing we need to deal with is our electric start assembly. No storage issues with them. Make sure your blue wire is intact. A lot of people tear them. They're like $1 and change at your hobby store. So you can do that. Just make sure all the wires are connected. You have your easy start box. Some of the older ones just had a battery strapped to a little box. This is the newer style. All the same exact thing. Make sure you charge your battery pack up that's in it. And then try to turn the motor over. Just attach it in and you push the button. You've got 2 lights that are on here. If only one light is burning, you want to see which one is out. One says motor. You would know it if the starter motor wasn't turning over. The other one is the glow plug light. The glow plug in the motor may not be burnt out. A lot of times on these starters, the starter assemblies themselves go bad. So you always want to have a spare glow plug handy. Again, that same trip to the hobby store, about $7, $8 for a good glow plug. You always want to have a spare one, put it in and try it. Make sure your glow plug's getting hot. Then you want to start turning the motor over. What you need to do first is prime the motor. And to prime it, what you want to do is get fuel up from the fuel tank up to the engine. What you're going to do is hold your fingertip over the exhaust port. With your finger over the exhaust, it's going to pressurize the fuel line and you'll be able to see fuel suck up to the carburetor. Once it gets to the carburetor, keep holding it down and eventually the engine should start kicking over and hopefully start. Let's see what this one's going to do for us. So it was a little moody there and it sounded like it ran out of fuel. I'm going to give it a little more gas. And it's shutting off. Notice I'm not doing anything with the remote. If your throttle is in the off position, you don't need the remote. A lot of you guys, if you're novices with it, you don't remember what you're doing, go ahead and be safe. Turn your radio system on. And make sure your throttle is closed all the way. And we're going to hit it a little bit more. And let it come up to an idle. And again, you may be doing this a little while on an old engine to get it running properly. Just like an old Chevy, you know, when you get it started, you want to kind of goose it a little, clear it out. You may get a lot of smoke out the exhaust. We'll see if we can get this one running quick here. Alright, so you see once you get them going and you clear out some of that initial dust, they're usually pretty good to go. A couple things that you may find, you know, you saw I revved the engine, the car wanted to take off. Very popular issue with the old T-Maxes is they would start bucking on you a whole lot. That means you have the idle set a little bit too high. That'll be a whole nother video that we can do on how to tune the carburetor to fine tuning. But that's just an idle adjustment. It doesn't mean anything is bad or broken in the transmission. It's just an idle adjustment issue. If the engine is constantly stalling out, it could be that the idle is too low. That's the basics, though, on what you need to do to get your T-Max started and see if you want to proceed from there. Now, you got to this point with it, you say, alright, I got a working car, I want to go play with it. There's a couple more things you want to do. You can see to this one, we added a new air filter to it. If you got an old dried out air filter, you're going to start sucking foam pieces into the carburetor, and that's not a good thing. So invest in a good air filter from your local hobby store and put that on. Again, wait until you make sure the motor is working, everything's working before you spend this money. Other thing you definitely want to do is pick up a bottle of After Run. After Run goes into the motor when you're done running for the day. A couple of drops, again, into the glow plug or into the motor. Turn it over 1 or 2 times. This neutralizes the fuel and the oil that's in the engine, and basically is going to save you from having to watch this video in 2 more years when you take it out of the closet. Well worth doing. And also, next time you put it in the closet, take out the batteries first. You don't want that corrosion in the system. So, that's all we have for now. Thank you for tuning in to another quick how-to video from Hobby Masters.